How much does it really cost to own a Tesla? Today we'll be going over the exact amount that I pay every month, including the monthly payment, insurance, registration, maintenance, subscriptions, and the cost of charging exclusively at Tesla superchargers. Let's get into it. If you're new here, my name is Luis, and earlier this year I purchased a 2024 Model 3 Performance. This is my first electric vehicle, and let me tell you, it's been a wild ride, both literally and figuratively. I knew it would be different going from a gas vehicle to an electric one, but I didn't quite expect it to be this different. If you want the full review of my experience for the first month with this Model 3, check out the link to that video in the description. I want to take a second and say a huge thank you for all of the support on my very first YouTube video. I would have never imagined posting that video would have gotten that much support, and I really appreciate it. I want to continue making videos that you enjoy and that I have fun making, so I'll leave it up to you. What video should I make next? Should I make a driving experience or a Tesla accessories video next? Let me know in the comments. Alright, with that out of the way, let's talk about the numbers. I purchased my Tesla in August when Tesla was offering a 1.99% promotional APR. I'd been on the fence about purchasing this Tesla for months, but then the perfect storm of events occurred, which had me finally sign on the dotted line. First of all, gas prices kept going up. I live in Washington State, which historically has been in the top 5 most expensive places for fuel, currently sitting at number 3, only behind Hawaii and California. Although there are a lot of factors that go into the price of fuel, it felt like the price of gas was eating more and more into my monthly budget. That's when I really started considering the purchase of an electric vehicle. After a bit of research, I found that Washington actually has one of the cheapest per kilowatt hour rates for electricity. Once again, in third, but this time for a good reason. For context, the cheapest per kilowatt hour rate in the US for residential electricity in July of this year was 11.5 cents per kilowatt hour in the state of Louisiana. The most expensive, on the other hand, was Hawaii at over 42 cents per kilowatt hour. This made for a super strong case to go from purchasing some of the most expensive fuel in the United States to some of the cheapest electricity. So then I started looking at interest rates for new vehicles. If I was going to purchase a new vehicle, I wanted to make sure, like most people, to get a competitive interest rate. Unfortunately, I'm not currently in a position to pay a new vehicle off completely, so a good interest rate was among my top priorities. Like I mentioned, in August of this year, Tesla offered a 1.99% APR on the Tesla Model 3. This really started me down the rabbit hole of figuring out if a Model 3 would really be the right EV to purchase. Speaking of competitive interest rates, Tesla is currently offering 0% APR on both the Model 3 and Model Y. If you're considering a Tesla, now might be a really good time to take advantage of this interest rate. You can also find a referral code in the description that will take up to $1,000 off the purchase price. Obviously, this isn't sponsored, but using the referral code will also help me get some free supercharging. So, win-win. Speaking of wins, I also qualified for the federal EV tax credit, which immediately made the Model 3 $7,500 more affordable. Tax credits are always changing, both at the federal and state level, so it's worth taking some time to research your state and see if there's any additional tax incentives or credits to further reduce the cost of your EV. Now, the final nail in the coffin was my wife's car breaking down. A 2011 Chevy Impala that we affectionately named the Boat had a list of recommended fixes from our local Chevy dealership that was multiple pages long. For the last 5 years, we spent over $6,000 to keep this car rolling, all in an effort to try and keep from purchasing a new vehicle. Over this time frame, we try to be as strategic as possible with the repairs, making sure to fix only the most crucial of issues. But after it broke down this last time, it got to the point where in order to fix it, to keep it rolling, we would need to pay another $3,000 to $4,000 in parts and labor. In other words, they wanted approximately the value of the vehicle in repairs, and that was just something I wasn't willing to do. So with this quote, we knew we couldn't keep this car any longer, and so decided to commit to purchasing the Tesla Model 3. So let's get into the monthly costs. First up, the purchase price. So here's what I paid for the Tesla Model 3 Performance in white with full self-driving for an additional $8,000. After the destination and order fee, the total came to $64,630. But like those early 2000 infomercials, but wait, there's more. This total does not include taxes, which in my area came out to be $6,883.10. So that brings the grand total to $71,513.10. Now, if we subtract the order fee of $250 and the federal tax credit of $7,500 and adding registration fees, the total amount financed at 1.99% was $64,012.85. On a 72-month term or 6 years, that brings the total monthly cost to $944.71. Now, if you appreciate this level of financial transparency, let me know by hitting that subscribe button. Now let's talk about insurance, which of course varies wildly based on a number of factors, but here's some context of my situation. Both my wife and I are on the policy. We both have perfect driving records with no tickets or accidents. I prepay for 6 months for an added discount. We're both 30 years old, which when I say out loud does kind of make me feel a little old, but it is what it is. We have 2 vehicles on the policy, the 2024 Tesla Model 3 Performance and a 2018 Audi A5. Our current insurance provider is Progressive, and we currently have a $50K, $100K, $100K policy, but I am thinking about increasing that at the next renewal date for a bit more protection. Both vehicles have comprehensive and collision insurance with a $1,000 deductible. I've also added Progressive's version of gap insurance to the Tesla, which if you're not familiar with, is a must-have to protect you in a worst case scenario. Specifically, it helps you cover the difference between what you owe on your car loan and the actual value of your car if it's stolen or totaled. The difference is known as the gap. When you don't put a lot of money down for a new vehicle, you immediately create this gap because of how quickly a vehicle depreciates after purchase. Typically, this is 10% or more as soon as you drive it off the lot. All this to say, if you're not putting 10% or more down for your vehicle, you want to make sure to purchase gap insurance to keep you protected in one of these worst case scenarios. With both vehicles and the coverage I've shared, the total cost of my insurance premium is $1,505, and this is for 6 months of coverage. The Tesla specific portion of that total is $990 for 6 months, or $165 per month. So now let's talk about maintenance and service costs. When it comes to maintenance and service costs, thankfully, up to this point, it has been $0. When I went to take delivery of the vehicle, I took other Tesla owners' suggestion and carefully looked over the entire vehicle. It was almost perfect. Looking closely at the driver's side rear passenger door, I noticed the window was cracked in the corner. I let one of the Tesla reps know, and they did their best to see if they could replace the window and fix the issue before I left with the vehicle that day. Unfortunately, they did not have a replacement window, and I had to request a service appointment to get it fixed. About 2 weeks later, a Tesla service technician through mobile service showed up to my house and replaced the window within about 30 minutes. And then he was on his way. This is such a drastic difference than my previous experience of having to set an appointment, drive to the dealership, either wait there or get a ride back to my place, get a call that the work has been completed, and go back to the dealer and pick up the vehicle. I know not everything can be fixed through Tesla's mobile service, but when it can, it's wildly convenient. Now let's talk about subscriptions. Unfortunately, this is one of the biggest cons of owning a Tesla, and getting access to those premium features requires that premium connectivity subscription. Premium connectivity will cost you either $10 a month or $99 a year if you pay for it up front, which comes out to $8.25 per month. Features included with this premium connectivity range from live traffic visualizations to video and music streaming. These services, along with a live camera view of Sentry Mode, are the main reasons I'm willing to pay the yearly cost for premium connectivity. The other optional subscription package you can pay for is full self-driving, which comes out to $99 a month. I decided to pay for the upgrade to full self-driving at the time of purchase for $8,000 because if you've seen my 1-month Tesla review, I am really not a fan of these subscription models. So access to full self-driving is already baked into the purchase price of the vehicle. I plan on keeping this car for a really long time, so it made more sense to me to pay the one-time fee than a perpetual $100 a month for as long as I own the car. And as Tesla says, that price is subject to change, or in other words, likely to increase over time. Now the question is full self-driving actually worth it? That can be an entire video on its own. If you'd like me to review the current state of full self-driving, let me know in the comments. Okay, now for one of my most frequently frequently asked questions. How does the cost of charging compare to the cost of buying gas? For some perspective, I took delivery of the Tesla on August 15th and today is November 9th. In these roughly 3 months, my wife and I have driven the Tesla over 1,700 miles. If we were filling up our gas car twice per month at a minimum for approximately $50 per fuel up, we'd be looking at, on the low end, $300 in gas over this time period. There are a couple of different superchargers in our area and each has a different rate per kilowatt hour of electricity. One has a flat rate for kilowatt hour no matter the time of day you go to charge. The other offers a peak and non-peak rate. The peak rate cost is about 32 cents per kilowatt hour and the non-peak rate is 18 cents per kilowatt hour. I would consider that extremely affordable for electricity costs. As I mentioned earlier, prices of electricity can vary a lot based on location, but I didn't expect it to vary that much within a 10-mile radius. What does that mean in total cost per charge? Well, I've been able to go from approximately 20% to the recommended 80% at the non-peak rate for less than $10. More specifically, the last time I charged up, I was able to do it for a total cost of $9.32. Although I'm not always able to charge it at this non-peak rate, it's the theoretical minimum I could be paying for supercharging in my area. So what has the total cost been for those 1,700 miles? A total of $147, or roughly $49 a month. Or put another way, about half the cost of gas during that same time frame. In the future, we of course hope to switch to at-home charging and reduce the cost of charging the Tesla even more, but for the time being, we are super happy with what we've been able to save and the convenience of supercharging. I'm sure some will argue that I'm not accounting for the time it takes to drive to a supercharger, wait for it to charge, and then drive home, and that's true. But the fact is, I love driving this car. And when it comes time to wait for the car to charge, I can open up the YouTube app on the center display. 1 or 2 YouTube videos later, the car is charged and I can be on my way. So if we take all of these totals for the monthly payment, insurance, maintenance, subscriptions, and using superchargers, we get a total monthly cost of $1,166.96. Is this more or less than you thought it would cost to own a 2024 Tesla Model 3 Performance? Let's talk about it in the comments. Now, if you want to learn about my experience owning this Tesla for the first month, including the biggest pros and cons, I highly recommend you watch this video next, where I go over all those details as a new EV owner. See you there.